Welcome to the 7th webinar in the series on buying and owning a property in Spain by Medland, Spain. Those of you who don't already know me from the A Place in the Sun exhibitions, my name is Roy Howitt and I am the UK country manager at Medland, and I've had the privilege to live in Spain now for the last 18 years. I actually live in the Costa Blanca area, not far from Lasagna. We've been holding a series of one-to-one webinars now for a number of weeks. In fact, we've done something in excess of 45 of these, where we run through on an individual basis the requirements and queries for specific clients looking eventually to travel to Spain after they lift the travel restrictions. One thing that's become very clear is the amount of confusion around the new visa and time that you can spend in Spain. So what we decided to do is, on this particular webinar, to be able to run through with you the visa requirements and the holiday requirements in a lot more detail. And unlike having a live Zoom webinar, we're doing it on a recorded basis so that you can watch it later on YouTube. In actual fact, we've received something in excess of 60 questions when we were talking to clients about hosting this particular webinar, specifically around this process. Contrary to what people may believe, the business in Spain and the pricing in Spain more specifically for properties hasn't been dropping. In fact, in the new build market, which we operate in, it's been seen recently to be increasing, because although people haven't been able to travel to Spain and certainly not been buying in Spain, the demand is still there. And also the fact that developers haven't stopped constructing during the pandemic period. So nowadays there are a lot more key ready properties available for people that are willing and able to travel. And of course, an increase in sales through virtual viewings. You know, ideally for somebody, if they've been to the area previously, a virtual viewing, a video viewing, or whereas we actually take people around live with the cameras, etc., is a very good way of looking and establishing properties or buying a property. What we've specifically been doing is, through these one-to-one webinars, starting the introduction of the areas and the processes with people, so that when they are ready to travel or able to travel, it speeds up their ability to know the area and buy in a specific area. The other thing that's happening in Spain is that demand is changing. As an international company, we deal with 11 different countries through our own individual country teams, sales teams. One demand that we were surprised about is the demand now in the Spanish market. One result of the pandemic has been that people have suddenly discovered that they can work from home, that the technology and the internet access is there in Spain through fiber, etc., and high-speed connectivity. And they can now move away or move out of the cities where they have limited space in the typical apartment situation, somewhere like Barcelona or Madrid, and down to the coast where they can get a lot of value and, of course, a lot more outside space. So we've seen a massive increase in demand from Spanish clients recently. The UK is no longer the biggest buyers of Spanish properties. In previous years, yes, the UK market's certainly been, or UK buyers have been the highest percentage of buyers. That isn't necessarily the case anymore. Nowadays, it tends to be the Northern Europeans, the Scandinavians, the Belgians, the Dutch, that are the predominant buyers in Spain. Of course, they're not affected by the Brexit situation or the withdrawal situation as the UK market is. And therefore, the demand is still there, and there has been limited effect on pricing. So we don't see that the market is changing dramatically at the moment. So I'm going to move on to basically go to the presentation now that we're here to show you today. Just before I move on, for those interested, I do like my Zoom backgrounds, as many of you know. And today I've actually got a view there from one of the villas that we sell, which is in Calpe. And the views are out to the Calpe Rock. This is a key ready property in actual fact, costing some 800,000 euros in Calpe that I'm using as a backdrop. So let's go on and have a look at the specific presentation. For those of you So for those of you that don't already have my contact details, here is my email address, my telephone number, and you can also contact me via Facebook and also on some of the messaging platforms, including WhatsApp and Telegraph. I'm more than happy to take direct calls and direct messages with specific queries that a client may have. This is the agenda for today. What we're going to do is we're going to start by running through the property purchasing process and what's changed pre and post Brexit. We're going to look at the various visas now, because it's not possible now to obtain residency in Spain unless you were here prior to the withdrawal agreement. So unless you were here prior to December of this year, where you could still apply for residency in Spain, you now have to come into the country, apart from if you're a holidaymaker, of course, on a visa system. And specifically, we're going to look at the non-lucrative visa and the golden visa and its requirements and processes. What you actually then do when you arrive in Spain, this is the thing about the driving licenses, tax and insurance. And finally, around our buying process, or the buying processes, mortgages, and our offers on viewing trips for people who are able to travel to Spain. The dates that we expect the main situation be resolved, as we all know, in the UK is around about May the 17th, and we're already booking people to come over to view properties from that date. Medland Spain are a new build specialist. We only offer the new build, modern, contemporary design properties, and have been doing that since 2013 across a specific area that includes the Costa Blanca, North, South, and the Costa Calida. I mentioned earlier on that we are an international company selling to 11 different countries through our dedicated sales teams. And we are a Spanish company. We have more than 46 staff employed over 2 offices. The impact on the pandemic for us hasn't been that dramatic, given that we sell the new build properties and we continue to sell those during the pandemic itself. And we will continue to do that over this difficult period. But what also makes us very different is that our after sales service, in that we don't just sell properties, we have a team whose responsibility is to deliver those properties, is to deliver furniture, to deliver fixtures, fittings, to make sure that even though you are remote, you are getting the correct and timely information associated with the delivery of that particular property, so that literally you can just arrive with your suitcases. Our offices were based just outside Torrevieja. This is our very low profile building. And we cover 450 kilometers of coast currently, starting down just into Almeria, Vera, coming through the Costa Calida area around Murcia, into Alicante and south, and finally into Costa Blanca north. We're looking at pricing bands currently. The 2 areas, a price of a property is based predominantly on the price of the land. The more expensive the land, the more expensive the property, because building materials and labour are pretty much the same for the vast majority of properties. So price banding wise, at the moment, our cheapest area is down here, Murcia, going down to Almeria, where the land is still that much less expensive. In the middle area that we all know, which is the Costa Blanca south area, the areas around Torrevieja, Cabarroig, Benihoffa, Casada, very much middle ground on pricing. And the most expensive area still maintains Costa Blanca north of Alicante Airport, which includes areas like Altea, Denia, Calpe, Finestrat, Benidorm, and those areas. Again, based purely on the land prices. So what's changed? Well, as far as holidaying in Spain, as far as holiday ownership and owning a holiday property, not a lot, with one exception. Buying fees are pretty standard. If you are looking at buying a property in Spain, then it doesn't matter whether it's a new build or a second-hand property. You're looking at adding the region of 14% on top of the published prices, and nobody published prices, including the buying fees. I always say the best way of looking at it is, if I know the euro at the moment is weakening against sterling. Today, I think we're sitting at about 116, 117. But if you work on a rule of thumb that if you're based it on 14% buying fees, and say that roughly something that would cost him 250,000 euros with all the buying fees is going to cost you 250,000 pounds. It's a good place to start, right? Very, very slightly, but at least it will give you a very quick and easy indication on the pricing of a particular property that you could be interested in. When it comes to ownership costs, they're the same for every nationality. Doesn't matter whether you're from Poland, Italy, whatever. The basic buying fees, owning fees and the buying fees are always the same. You have to pay your rates or your IBI. That's your cost for getting your rubbish collection, your sewage, your street lighting, your policing. And that will average on a typical Spanish property around about 400 euros per annum. That obviously varies by type, but that's a pretty good average across the board. Not 400 a month, 400 a year. That's something like a 250 to 300,000 euro villa based on that sort of pricing level. If you have a property that's on a community with communal facilities, including those, for example, lifts, communal swimming pool, some facilities these days now have indoor and outdoor pools, gyms, you will pay a community fee for the maintenance of that community. And that can vary between 30 euros a month and 100 euros a month, with the average being around about 480 euros a year. And the final thing is it as a non-resident, and that doesn't matter whether you're a UK non-resident or a Swedish non-resident, you have to pay a wealth tax, an annual amount that is based on the valuation of the property, on a fixed percentage of the valuation of the property as valued at the town hall. Again, on a property in the region of 200,000 euros, you're talking about 300 to 400 euros a year. Those are all of the fees associated with owning the property. The thing that has changed and is confusing people is the new 90-day rule that applies to anybody that is a non-EU resident. And this applies to the 22 European Schengen countries because it's not an EU rule, it's a Schengen rule, the Schengen state. So in the 22 European Schengen countries, for example, which include Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, Germany, the maximum number of days that you can stay is 90 days in every 180 days. Now, this is subject to review at the moment in a number of countries, but at the moment, as things stand, on March 21st, which is today's date, it's 90 days, and those number of days start from the day that you arrive in the country and are accumulative against any countries that you visit within the Schengen region. So, for example, if you spend 15 days in Germany and 15 days in France and 15 days in Spain, that's 45 days accumulated across 3 countries. And that starts from the day that you arrive in the country. And what they are doing now is electronically recording and stamping passports at the entry and exit point. The first anniversary date, to be honest on this, is going to be the 31st of March, because that will be the end of the first 90-day period. And we've already been advised by the various consulates that if there is no stamp or you cannot prove when you entered the country, obviously that will default to December. And anybody staying over that period from December through to the 31st of March would have deemed to have stayed longer than 90 days. Again, we don't know what they're going to do in terms of fines or actions, etc. These are being reviewed at country level, but obviously at the moment there's a bit more of a focus on resolving the pandemic. But it's not something that is going to go away. It's not something that they're not going to act on. So if you are, it is something that they will record, even if, for example, I was asked on one question, well, what happens if I arrive in France on the tunnel and drive across to Spain? Your entry point and your entry date will be recorded when you entered the tunnel. So there's no way around this in terms of that 90-day accumulation. Please also remember that it's always been the case that if you spend more than 183 days in any of these Schengen nations, you are legally obliged to become a resident, both in terms of resident in the country and a tax resident, to pay your tax in each of these countries. If you now require to stay longer than the 90 days, then you have to do it on the basis of a visa. And that visa has to be obtained in your country of residence prior to traveling. So in the case of a UK client, they have to apply for the visa in the UK. And I'll go on to the process in just a second on how to do that. For investors, there have been a couple of changes post-Brexit. The first one is that they've changed the amount of tax that you pay on income from 19%, which is paid by an EU resident, to 24%. And there is no tax relief now against income and expenses. So whereas you were able to offset your costs of mortgage or property management or electricity and various other things, insurances, you can no longer do that as a non-EU resident. You still require the letting license, which you can obtain as part of the buying process via your lawyer. Nowadays, if you're going to list a property on portals such as Airbnb and the various owners abroad sites, they will ask you for the number of that particular license. And that license requires that the properties are inspected to maintain the quality by the local town hall. Of course, and again, a question I was asked, if you're letting to friends and family, then you're not commercially deemed as commercially letting, and therefore not necessarily requiring this license. There are benefits, and you can get back some of the tax benefits by registering the property in a company in Spain, but that has to be a Spanish company, an SL company that is created in Spain. Again, we have companies that specialize in delivering this particular type of service and advising you on the regulations associated with that. So what's the question? The question is now, what are the options? If I want to retire to Spain, if I want to work in Spain, what are the options available to me on the visas? And remember, if you wish to stay longer than the 90 days, unless you're an Irish passport holder, of course, you require a visa. And the most popular one, and the one we're doing most work around and most queries on at the moment, is what they call the non-lucrative visa, the NLV. And this is specifically designed for people that want to retire to Spain. The second option is for people that are willing to invest in Spain, to invest in the country, and that's the golden visa. Now, we're only focused here on people that want to invest in property or properties, but those properties have to be over 500,000 euros. Third visa is what they call the entrepreneurial visa. And this is where you are coming to Spain to create a business. This involves the delivery of a service or explaining the service and products that you're going to be offering in Spain, which should be unique and of value to the country. And you do this by presenting a business plan. A student visa is when you enroll in an educational facility in Spain. So same as it is in the UK in terms of foreign students coming in to study. And the final one is the work visa. And the work visa is for a self-employed or employed person coming to work for a Spanish company who are sponsoring them. Now, again, this is a process which is quite complicated in that the company that are going to employ you have to justify that there is nobody within that country that could carry out a similar function. The big thing about the non-lucrative visa, unlike the golden visa, is that you are not allowed to work in Spain if you're here on a non-lucrative visa, and I'll go on to explain more about that in a second. So the NLV, the non-lucrative visa, is designed specifically for people that want to retire to Spain, and it covers the visa holder, their spouse, any children under the age of 18, and any dependent parents, all can be included within that non-lucrative visa. The initial term of the visa is 12 months, and then the renewal period is 2 years, up to a maximum of 5 years, after which time you would apply and become a resident. And the key point about a non-lucrative visa is you're not allowed to work in Spain if you're here on a non-lucrative visa. The area of debate at the moment is around what they call digital nomads. In other words, people that are working but not working within the EU and are working remotely or digitally. And that's open to interpretation at the moment. Our only advice we've received is that at the time, if you apply for a non-lucrative visa, you shouldn't highlight the fact if you are a digital nomad and working in another country. It's always been the case that if you are in Spain or a European country more than 183 days, you need to pay tax in Spain. And you are required under the non-lucrative visa to reside in Spain a minimum of 183 days anyway. So you will by default become a Spanish tax payer. I'll go on to talk a little bit about the dual tax treaty in a second. The golden visa comparatively is definitely the most flexible visa available to people and is used a lot by the American and Chinese people that come to Spain, for example. And you have to invest in Spanish property or properties in excess of 500,000 euros. And the properties have to be mortgage free. So it has to be a cash purchase of properties in excess of 500,000 euros on the deeds, on the escritura. Exactly the same as it covers the buyer, spouse, sibling, parents, identical. But with a golden visa, you are allowed to work in Spain, and the initial period is not 1 year, but 2 years. But there is no obligation to spend any guaranteed period in Spain. You can stay in Spain for 1 day and still benefit from a golden visa. But if you do spend more than 183 days in Spain, then you do become a tax resident, the same as the NLV. One of the big differences to the visa applications going back to December, where you were able to apply for residency if you could prove you were in Spain living prior to December the 31st, and the system now is the amount of income or savings that you have to have in order to qualify for a non-lucrative visa or a golden visa. In Spain, they work on the basis of a thing called IPREM. This is the index by which they calculate the amount of savings or income you require in order to qualify for the visa. And the IPREM, the basic IPREM amount hasn't increased for the last 4 years, but it did increase in 2021. Whereas the basic IPREM rate is 6,778 euros and 80 cents. And if you were applying for residency from within the EU, this is the amount of money they would require you to have in savings or income from a guaranteed income force, a pension, in other words, to qualify for a visa. However, if you're applying outside of the EU, this includes the UK now, Australia, America, you actually require 4 times the IPREM rate. In other words, for a single individual, the minimum amount that you require in savings that have been in a bank for a minimum period of 3 months is 27,112 euros. And in the case of a married couple, it increases by 1 times IPREM, so by 6,778 euros to 33,980, and by the same amount for every additional person included in the non-lucrative visa. The other alternative to the savings route is the guaranteed income route. And this is where they look at guaranteed income in terms of pension payments, where the minimum requirement is 2,259 euros or 2,831 euros for a married couple. The same amount additional, 6,778 for every additional person included on the visa. And because the non-lucrative visa is renewed for 2 years after the first year, that amount of savings or income doubles. Now, I did find out last week something which was quite interesting, and that is you can do this by a combination of income and savings. So, for example, if you had 2,000 euros per month coming in on a guaranteed pension, you could reduce the amount of savings required. These amounts are the same as if you were applying for residency, if you resided outside of the EU region, or if you subsequently changed from a non-lucrative visa or a golden visa to full residency. So as I mentioned earlier on, you apply in your country of residence, and the normal application fee is £80. On the application, you have to have an address in Spain, but that can be an agent acting on your behalf. So, for example, a lawyer or a service company providing the visa application process as a service. And when you apply for the golden visa, you only have to show the contract for the property that you've purchased, but you also, on both of these visas, have to supply a criminal records check for the previous 5 years. And you obtain this through a site called ACRO. That enables you to register your details and obtain the CRO license for the period required as part of the visa process. What's very important to the visa process is that you purchase the correct level of private medical insurance. And the private medical insurance has to be, for a period of 12 months, paid, with what we say no co-payments. In other words, it has to cover everything with no additional payments required for any other treatments. Now, medical insurance in Spain is much cheaper than it is in the UK. And we've seen quotes without any sort of any serious other illnesses as part of the medical cover for the region of about €1,300 per annum for a couple. But please remember, this is your medical cover in Spain. Often I see on the various forums, what's the cheapest I can get, but this is what's going to cover you if you are ill, if you need a doctor, if you need any treatment during your time in Spain. So please don't skimp on this. Make sure that you have the correct level of cover and the correct level of cover to obtain the residency. Too often we're seeing these applications rejected on the basis that it isn't sufficient cover. When you speak to the insurance company, get them to verify that the level of cover they're offering will cover an application for a non-lucrative or golden visa. And get them to do that in writing such that you can then guarantee that they're not going to reject your application. You also need a medical certificate showing that you don't have any infectious diseases, your marriage certificate if you're applying for a joint one, and the birth certificates for children if they're included in the non-lucrative visa. And make sure that your passport is valid for the period of the visa. Everything has to be translated and stamped and verified by a particular organization, which I mentioned on here. That's your basic documentation for the initial application. As I mentioned earlier on, you have to apply for the visas in person in the UK because they then do your fingerprinting. And there are 3 consulates in the UK, one in London, one in Manchester, and one in Edinburgh. We're advising people to start the process at least 3 months prior to traveling. They're quoting at the moment about 5 to 6 weeks to process applications, but they've been closed till recently. They're only literally just reopened. So we don't know yet what the volumes are going to be going through the system and how long they're going to take to process those. Remember, it doesn't stop you traveling to Spain. It doesn't stop you traveling and spending the 90-day period. It's purely for the longer term that you start the visa application process. There are third-party organizations offering this service. I've seen pricing varying from 300 to even 3,000 euros per person. But it's very important that the service that you take from the provider gives you a Spanish address as required. And they also cover not only the visa application, but the other application processes required when you come to Spain, which are the TIE, and I'll come on to later on the driving license. You can present all of the documents electronically prior to the appointment at the consul. So it doesn't just end with any of these European countries when you obtain your visa. When you arrive in Spain, you have 30 days in which to apply for and obtain your TIE card, which is your Spanish foreigner's card, your national identity card, as you can see on the screen there. This also requires that you attend the foreigner's office in the local area where you're living for fingerprints, and then you subsequently go back to collect this particular card. Now some bad news. We are still waiting to see if they will change the regulations associated for this. But as things stand at the moment, in order to change your driving license, you actually have to take a Spanish driving test, both practical and theory, which they deliver in English. Our advice around this is to go to a Spanish driving school who will take you through the theory test and the driving side. It's fair to say the driving test is very short. And I say we understand that people have taken this. It's more difficult to fail it than it is to pass it. On the basis that you are staying in Spain more than 183 days, you will have to do an annual tax return, which we do in June, which is known as the renta, and register with the Spanish social security number ideally using an accountant or a lawyer as your fiscal representation. And finally, it's very, very important that you have a Spanish will, because the laws of succession in Spain are different to those in the UK. For example, it's normal that if something happened to me, for example, it would, without a will, it would be my older son that would inherit the assets, not my wife. She wouldn't be very happy about that. Of course, you can, after a period of time, apply for a full residency, which is a 5-year term. That would give you the ability to work in Spain. You would still become a fiscal resident of Spain in the same way with your tax return. But the other thing you can do, and it isn't just residency, but you can also, after your first initial 12 months, apply to join the Spanish medical system using what they call a Form S1. This is the transfer document where you can transfer your health cover from the UK to Spain and use a Spanish equivalent to the NHS system. That's it on visas. Again, if you have any questions or queries, this is as things stand now. There are potentially other legislation that countries are looking at to change some of these systems, but nothing is guaranteed. Unfortunately, there are too many Facebook warriors out there who are talking about things that are going to change. There's nothing currently agreed in terms of any changing to those systems. So at the moment, if you are looking to come to Spain and retire, that is your route. And the reason that they look at the savings and income is because there is no Spanish social security system for people that have not contributed to the system. There's no net that will catch people if they can't afford to live or pay their bills in Spain. I want to move on to the ways of purchasing a property. Now we've done visas. And at the moment, there is a very good opportunity as far as Spanish mortgages are concerned. However, again, the mortgage process in Spain is different and can be confusing to people, in that although you can obtain 70% loan to value for mortgages over 100,000 euros, they don't finance the buying fees as part of the mortgage. And what I mean by that is, if the cost associated with buying the property is, for example, 14 or 15%, then that's not part of the loan. So in reality, you would only get 55% loan to value, and you would have to come up with a 15%. So you would still need 45% from your own money as a deposit. There are mortgages offered in Spain with and without life cover. And there's no such thing as a buy-to-let mortgage in Spain, or interest only available. But they do take mortgages through to an older age. In actual fact, in Spain, they'll go out to 75 or 80. And they do look at income from pensions and investments as part funding of mortgages. Not 100% of perhaps an investment coming in, but certainly a percentage of it. In fact, the calculation is very easy. In Spain, they're not interested in how much money you have coming in. They're more interested in the affordability of that particular mortgage. And they look for 30% approximately of your money you have left over as covering the mortgage payments. We are seeing very good rates at the moment. In fact, I've talked about 2% and 1.5%. We've just had a mortgage processed over here, 1.2% fixed for a period of 10 years. The normal variable rate is between 1.1 and 1.5%. And there are very few penalties for early settlement. During the first 5 years, it's 0.25%, although there are also some mortgage companies scrapping that now as well. And you can pay off up to 25% lump sum annually without any penalty. It's important to understand that you can't actually get a mortgage on an off-plan property, but you can obtain a mortgage in principle without any financial commitment. Prior to coming to Spain, it's a very good idea to look at what you can afford perhaps before coming to Spain to buy a property. And then you know the levels at which you can buy a property, and that those agreement in principle, as we call them, normally stand for a period of 6 months. So in that 6-month period to come out to purchase the property, you know that you're able to still buy the property and the rate at which, and fix the rate at which on the mortgage. We do have mortgage companies that we can recommend and you can get in touch with if you're looking for an agreement in principle on finance. We deal only in new build properties. And one of the concerns previously has always been, well, what if I buy the property, I pay my deposits and the developer goes bust and I don't get the property built, and where do I stand on that sort of basis? Well, big thing in Spain is the law changed quite dramatically to account for this type of historical problem in Spain. You would have heard about these problems in the older days, but nowadays rarely do you see any articles or people suffering as a result of a property not being built or delivered to contract because of the changes in the law. And one of the changes in the law is that the builders no longer receive any of the payments. If you buy a new property, then you may be buying it typically on a series of stage payments, maybe initially a 20% deposit, a second 20% payment during construction, and the balance of the 60% on completion. For every one of those payments now, you have to get a bank guarantee. The bank guarantee is covering you on the basis that either if the developer does not deliver the property to the date on the contract, or alternatively not to the specification on the contract and the development, you are entitled to receive back not only the monies that you paid, but also costs and an agreed rate of interest. It means now that the construction companies working, and it is the law to provide a bank guarantee, do not get this money. They have to be very much more self-funding than they were in previous days. So the contract must include the property specification, the facilities that are featured on any marketing materials, and the delivery date for the property all form now part of the contract. We always suggest that before you sign any contract or any reservation anyway, you get this looked at by an independent lawyer. It's certainly the way that we operate as a company. On all new build properties, as in the UK, you get a 10-year structural guarantee, which is independent of the developer. In other words, it's an insurance-based program, which is the law in Spain again. We've produced a great deal of information if we look at a second at our website, but one of the things one of the first companies, I believe, to start were the webinar series that we started back in September, October of last year. And to date, as I mentioned earlier on, this is webinar number 7. In the previous webinars, we've covered topics such as why buy on a golf resort, the Costa Blanca, the area and information on the properties, new build versus resale and the differences, the Costa Calida and the Costa Blanca North and South, pre-Brexit, buying and living in Spain, and finally, this particular one where we're looking, as I mentioned earlier on, about the visa issues, and these will continue, but we have our own YouTube channel. And if you visit the YouTube channel, you can rewatch these webinars. So please visit there and have a look at what we've done previously. They all run for around about an hour. Also on our YouTube channel, you can see individual properties. Every time we take on a new development, we do our own videos, walkthroughs, 360 tours, and they're all published on our YouTube channel. So what's next? Well, the first thing we suggest you do, obviously, is visit our website. We have a very, very comprehensive website, a multilingual site. You can see from clicking here all of the countries that we actually cover. On the UK side, you can search on a property. So you can go to a particular location, because buying a property is all about the location. I don't know how many times I say this during the Place in the Sun shows and presentations. Location is key. If you identify where you want to be, first of all, then finding the correct property becomes far easier. We can look at 1,000 pictures online on areas, but you really can't understand an area till you've got and visited it. So we've got lots of information on areas. We've got information on our buying guides. You can search on a particular property range. And unusually as an agent, what we actually provide on each property is not just the information and property and photographs and videos, but also the actual location of the property and plans. You can click through on our website and obtain a copy of the plans for each individual property. So there are villas, townhouses, apartments. There's a complete range of properties starting from, I think, cheapest of around about 90,000 euros in the new builds. So please, I would encourage you to visit the website. Once you've viewed these webinars, perhaps you want to visit us on a one-to-one Zoom call. In a one-to-one Zoom call, we will go through your requirements in a lot more detail and show you properties in specific areas. And again, we've been talking about the visa program and the relocation program as well as part of these Zoom calls. And alternatively, you can email me any queries and questions that you may have as a result of this webinar. Of course, when you come to Spain, you've got a choice. You can view independently. You can come out under your own steam without any obligation, and we will make an appointment and we will show you our properties. Or alternatively, you could book a Medland viewing trip, which is £99, and we are actively booking these now, where we agree in advance the properties that you want to see, the areas that you're interested in, and of course we have to have an understanding of your budget requirements and your financing and the way you're going to do this. But these are buying trips. These are designed specifically for people who are looking to come out and purchase a property. Finally, it leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us for this webinar today. I'm sure if you've got any questions, we're more than happy to help you. And I'm going to finish up on the viewing trip, to explain to you how the viewing trip works.
Costa Blanca, Costa Cálida. Two fabulous destinations in the Mediterranean that we want to bring into your lives, with the finest real estate and the best climate. And to do this smoothly and effectively, Medland presents you with a different viewing trip, with no pressure and no rush, with personalised, friendly attention, but also with the professionalism of the best experts. The ideal way to discover this wonderful region. The advantage of a viewing trip compared with making multiple appointments with various agents is clear. We will listen to you, we will help you, and we will take care of your needs. Let us work for you. Medland provides accommodation for clients who decide to make a viewing trip in the best hotels in the region, all located in peaceful areas to make your visit as comfortable as possible. Your consultant will always be there to guide you, helping you to find your ideal home, with practical advice and all the information you need to guarantee that you make the right choice. Professionalism, experience, and passion for our work. These are the tools with which we aim to convince you that we want you to be our new neighbour, and would like the Costa Blanca or the Costa Cálida to be your home too. Medland offers you a consolidated, structured organisation that will ensure that your viewing trip is as comfortable, simple, and useful as you had imagined. We will prepare an itinerary to show you the various properties and areas so that you can make the best decision. Medland has an extensive library of photos and videos and a range of audiovisual material so that you can see the homes before you visit, and will feel as if you already know them even before viewing them. Swiftness, clarity, and sincerity make everything flow much better, together with the human, friendly attention we are known for. On our viewing trip, you will also have time to relax, time to reflect, and take decisions with your partner. The time you need to absorb all the information and make the right decisions. The visit will be divided by areas, where we will show you the selection of properties we have prepared in collaboration with you. You will not only visit the homes, but also the areas in which they are all located, as we believe that not only the house itself is important, but also everything surrounding it, the services, communications, and facilities these areas offer. While we visit properties and areas, we will not miss the chance to show you another essential part of this country's famous lifestyle and culture, its cuisine. To discover the Mediterranean diet is to love our region. At Medland, we know that this land has one of the best diets in the world, so we will take advantage of meal times to help you to discover this marvel of our region. Medland places our resources at your disposal to make your visit as satisfactory as possible. Shopping and leisure areas and restaurants will be part of our visit. We will provide all this to help to make your decision as easy as possible. We are specialists in new build homes and offer our clients the highest qualities in the properties, ensuring that they meet all the necessary requirements and have all the necessary certificates. At Medland, we take care of both our clients and the product we offer. In our property catalogue, you will never find regulations not complied with or rules ignored. We make certain that what we offer is really the best you can find. We make sure that our properties are worthy of our clients. Once the choice has been made and the final decision has been taken, Medland will facilitate all the administrative and legal procedures necessary for purchasing your home, making the entire process simple and stress-free. We leave nothing to chance, and we will accompany you throughout the entire purchase process. Our relationship does not end when you buy one of our properties, because our after-sales department will make sure that your move to your new home runs as smoothly as possible. And afterwards, the professional relationship usually becomes a friendship. Let us work for you. Find out more about Medland's viewing trip.
So again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the content useful. Please come back to me if you have any queries or any other information required, and we'll be more than happy to help you. And I look forward to meeting you in the near future in Spain.